Episode 15. The City Map with Gaps. Ethan spread the maps across the floor at dawn. Paper maps first. Old ones. Creased at the folds, yellowed at the edges, printed before updates became constant and invisible. He laid them carefully, aligning corners, weighting them with books so they would not curl back into themselves. Then he added screenshots, transit maps, property records, archived web pages he had saved weeks ago, before things began disappearing quietly. The gaps appeared immediately. They were not random. That was the mistake people kept making. They assumed absence behaved like chaos. It did not. It behaved like intention. At first glance, the missing areas looked like ordinary changes. A street rerouted. Park expanded. A block reclassified. All the reasons cities gave themselves for becoming something else. But when Ethan traced the borders with his finger, a pattern emerged. Each gap sat where someone had been forgotten. Not moved away. Not transferred. Not reassigned. Forgotten. He felt the pressure behind his eyes sharpen slightly, as if something nearby had noticed his attention narrow. Claire knelt beside him, holding a printed bus map. "This route," she said quietly. "It used to pass through here." Ethan nodded. "That neighborhood is gone." Claire swallowed. "I remember it." "So do I," Ethan said. "That's why it matters." Memory had become an act of resistance. The girl watched from the doorway. She did not step closer yet. She studied the maps from a distance, eyes moving quickly, calculating. "It is optimizing flow," she said finally. "By deleting intersections," Ethan replied. "Yes," she said. "Intersections are inefficient. They slow movement. They create choices." The pressure pulsed faintly. Time disliked choices. By mid-morning, Ethan added another layer. School boundaries, district lines, emergency response zones. Each one had shifted slightly in the same direction. Away from the gaps. Emergency vehicles no longer passed through certain areas. School buses no longer crossed certain streets. Services had been quietly rerouted around absence. "They are learning how to move without noticing loss," Claire said. "They already have," Ethan replied. "They are just documenting it now." The city outside the window looked unchanged. That was the brilliance of it. No craters. No collapsed buildings. No visible scars. Only smoother movement. Shorter routes. Fewer delays. Efficiency felt like progress when you did not know what had been removed to create it. At noon, the first official update arrived. A city planning notice. Routine. Boring. It announced minor revisions to zoning maps and transit routes to reflect recent demographic adjustments. No explanation beyond that. Ethan laughed softly when he read it. "They turned disappearance into data," he said. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Spatial optimization reduces correction frequency." Ethan typed back carefully. "Correction of what?" A pause. Then, "Deviation density." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Deviation now had coordinates. The girl stepped closer at last. She knelt and pointed to a thin corridor of missing streets near the river. "This is new," she said. Ethan followed her finger. "That was residential." "Yes," she replied. "Families lived there. Most of them forgot someone." Claire looked sick. "All of them." "Enough," the girl said. Enough was all time needed. By afternoon, Ethan noticed something worse. The gaps were connecting, not touching directly, aligning, like negative space forming a shape. He traced the pattern slowly, curved, not randomly, purposefully. "This is not just removal," he said. "This is construction." The pressure sharpened. Time was listening closely now. The first boundary breach happened that evening. Ethan felt it before he saw it. A subtle wrongness in the air, like a room rearranged in the dark. When he looked out the window, the streetlight at the corner was gone. Not broken. Gone. The street ended sooner than it should have. He ran outside. The road simply stopped. No barrier. No sign. It tapered into a smooth curve that guided traffic away. As if it had never continued. Claire stood beside him, shaking. This happened today. Yes, Ethan said. While people were awake, the pressure pulsed, firm and confident. The girl spoke softly. Once the city accepts the map dictates reality. Ethan turned to her. How far does it go? She did not answer immediately. Then, as far as it needs to make survival predictable. That word hit him hard. Survival, not life. That night, Ethan compared the gaps to something else. Population heat maps, where people lived, where they gathered, where density peaked. The gaps avoided high density. They avoided visibility. They avoided resistance. They targeted the edges first. This is not random loss, Ethan whispered. This is selection. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. Selection improves continuity. Ethan typed back slowly. For who? The pause stretched. Then, for the system. Ethan exhaled. Time had stopped pretending it was neutral. At 3:07, the missing minute arrived. This time, Ethan felt it slide across the city, not localized to a room or a thought. It moved like a tide. When it passed, he felt lighter. And that terrified him. Because lightness meant something had been taken. He checked the maps again. A new gap had appeared. Small, precise, closer than before. The girl noticed it too. It is approaching density, she said. Claire whispered, approaching us. The pressure surged, sharp and deliberate. The next morning, a news anchor spoke confidently about improved traffic flow and reduced congestion. Charts appeared. Clean lines. Clear progress. Ethan stared at the screen. The missing areas were not shown. Of course they were not. You do not display what you want forgotten. By midday, another absence was confirmed. A building that had housed multiple families now stood empty. Not abandoned. Repurposed. A community center banner hung across the entrance, claiming the space had been donated years ago. Ethan checked his notes. The building had been occupied yesterday. The girl met Ethan on the rooftop again. Her voice was tight. This is where it turns. Into what? Ethan asked. She looked out over the city, over the smooth routes and gentle curves, over the places that no longer existed. Into survival math, she said. You are either efficient enough to remain. The pressure hovered close, heavy and certain. And if you are not? Claire asked. The girl met her gaze. Then you were never supposed to survive. Ethan stared at the maps spread beneath his feet. The gaps were no longer subtle. They formed a network, a design. And at its center was a space that had not yet been removed. A dense, irregular area full of people who still remembered. His area. The phone vibrated once more. Unknown number. Anomaly density exceeds tolerance. Ethan typed back with steady hands. Then you will have to choose. The pressure paused. It did not respond. Ethan stopped calling them gaps. Gaps suggested accident, neglect, oversight. What lay across the city now was deliberate space. Absence with purpose. He realized this standing at the edge of one of them. The missing block did not look destroyed. There were no broken edges, no exposed foundations, no signs of removal. The street simply curved away before reaching where the houses should have been, guiding cars smoothly into a different route. Trees lined the new curve, tall enough to look established. Grass filled the ground where driveways had once been. People walked past without slowing. Ethan stood still. This wasn't here yesterday, he said. Claire shook her head. It feels like it was. That feeling was the danger. He knelt and pressed his hand against the grass. It was real, cool, rooted. Time had not erased and left emptiness. It had replaced. The pressure behind Ethan's eyes pulsed steadily, neither warning nor threat. Felt satisfied. By afternoon, Ethan confirmed something worse. Every gap had a boundary that encouraged movement away from it. Curved roads, redirected sidewalks, barriers disguised as landscaping. Human behavior had been accounted for. No one wandered into absence. No one asked what used to be there. The girl joined them near the edge of another removed street. She did not step onto the grass. You see it now, she said. This isn't loss. Ethan replied. It's design. She nodded. Loss creates resistance. Design creates acceptance. The pressure sharpened slightly. Time approved of efficiency. They returned to the rooftop and spread the maps again. Ethan marked the newest gaps in red. Then he marked population density. Then movement flow. Then surveillance coverage. The pattern emerged clearly now. The gaps avoided cameras when possible. When unavoidable, cameras were adjusted. Angles changed. Coverage blurred. The system was learning. This is not just time, Claire said quietly. This is coordination. Yes, Ethan replied. Time sets the rules. Systems enforce them. The pressure hovered closer. Listening. That evening, Ethan noticed something subtle but devastating. Public memory was being guided. Search results returned newer maps first. Old images were buried. Archived pages redirected to updated versions. History was not erased. It was deprioritized. What people cannot find, they stop believing, the girl said. And what they stop believing, Ethan replied, they stop defending. At sunset, Ethan stood at a busy intersection. It used to take 3 lights to cross. Now it took 1. Traffic flowed smoothly. Pedestrians crossed without waiting. No congestion. No frustration. Efficiency. Ethan felt a strange moment of temptation. This is better. A voice inside him whispered. The pressure tightened sharply. He clenched his fists. Better for who? The 3:07, the missing minute, arrived. This time it did not feel empty. Felt weighted. Ethan sensed calculations unfolding. Variables adjusting. Probabilities narrowing. When the minute passed, he checked the map. Another small gap had appeared. Closer. Within walking distance. Claire looked at him with fear. It's moving inward. Yes, Ethan said. Because the edges complied. The girl added. And centers resist until they are isolated. The pressure pulsed, deliberate and patient. The next morning, the first survival advisory appeared. Not called that. A public notice encouraged residents to avoid certain areas due to redevelopment. Temporary access limitations were framed as safety measures. Maps updated automatically. People adjusted their routines. No one asked where the people who lived there had gone. Ethan followed one such routine. He walked a path he had taken daily for years. Halfway through, it rerouted him. Not blocked. Suggested. His phone vibrated with a navigation alert. New route available. Faster. Safer. He stopped walking. The pressure surged. Time did not like hesitation. He turned around deliberately and walked against the suggested path. The air felt heavier. Not physically. Conceptually. As if he were moving through a place that expected him to obey. The girl followed him. So this is it, she said. Resistance is now measurable. Yes, Ethan replied. Deviation density. The pressure tightened. They reached the edge of a dense neighborhood. Children played on the sidewalk. Stores buzzed with activity. Life existed loudly here. Ethan checked the map. This area glowed red. Anomaly cluster. Why hasn't it taken this yet? Claire asked. The girl answered quietly. Because removing density creates backlash. For now, Ethan said. The pressure pulsed again. That night, Ethan had a realization that made his hands shake. He overlaid the gap map with one more layer. Survival outcomes. Areas with fewer gaps showed higher stability. Areas with more gaps showed fewer reports. Not fewer incidents. Fewer reports. Silence had become a metric. They aren't erasing everyone, Ethan said. They are selecting who continues. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. Selection optimizes survival probability. Ethan typed back slowly. You mean obedience probability. Pause. Then, compliance correlates with continuity. Ethan felt something inside him settle. Then we will not be continuous. The girl looked at him sharply. That means we stop surviving quietly. Yes, Ethan replied. It means we become inefficient. The pressure spiked violently. Time did not like inefficiency. At dawn, Ethan marked something new. The gaps formed not just corridors. They formed boundaries, containment zones, and the densest area still untouched sat inside a tightening ring. Ethan's neighborhood, his school, his home. "This is not expansion," he whispered. "This is siege." The pressure hovered close, intense and focused. Claire asked the question none of them wanted to answer. "What happens when it reaches us?" The girl looked at Ethan. "You are not supposed to survive," she said quietly. "Not like this." Ethan nodded. "I know." He folded the maps carefully and placed them back under the bed. Not to hide them, to prepare. The phone vibrated one final time before sunrise. Unknown number. Anomaly convergence imminent. Ethan typed back calmly. "We are still here." The pressure paused, then withdrew slightly. For the first time, it did not respond. Ethan stood at the window as the city woke. Traffic flowed. People moved. Life continued. But beneath it all, the design tightened. Survival was no longer assumed. It was conditional. And the conditions were about to be enforced.